Nation. The hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews. It's your number one source. Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
Welcome to another stocked and loaded episode of the Sports Card Nation podcast, the show that brings you all the important hobby news, discussions, debates, opinions, info, and interviews with key hobby and sports dignitaries. Also, if you're good, you know we are going to give away something. Now, here's the guy that wanted the cards more than the gum. John Newman.
Welcome back, episode 75 of the Sports Card Nation podcast. I want to thank everyone for dropping in, joining us for another episode. We got a good one. Got a great guest, Rich Mueller from Sports Collectors Daily, a site I use daily. Get a lot of our news and hobby news. They've been around since 2006. Really the preeminent hobby news source, if you ask me. They report really on everything in detail, and they don't play any favorites. They just report the hobby news and everything, auction stuff, criminal activity, new releases, product news, everything. If you haven't checked that site out, go check it out. Very informative. You won't be disappointed. So Rich is on the program. We're going to talk about that site, how it all came about. He's got a background in journalism and being a sports anchor, a lot of experience. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little touch on the national. We're going to touch on how the hobby is still going strong, even though the pandemic is in full force. And we're going to talk about reasons why we think that is. Definitely an interesting conversation. And, he really runs that site almost solo, single-handedly, and so his finger's on the pulse of the hobby. So he's going to bring some of those insights to the show today, and we were happy to have him. Really thrilled to have him on the program. I think you'll appreciate it as well. One quick plug: our shorter show, which is Hobby Quick Hits. Earlier this week, we released episode 11. We called it the investment episode. And it set all sorts of records for that show within 4 hours of releasing it. It was the most listened to hobby quick hits out of the first 11. And I had a feeling it would be. The investment thing is a controversial subject, but how fast that thing took off even shocked me. So if you haven't checked that show out, and we really would appreciate it, it's 15-20 minutes an episode, no interviews, me picking one topic and just tackling it, saying my piece and wrapping it up. So they're usually generally anywhere from 15-20 minutes long, a lot shorter, obviously, than this program, which is why I did that other show, Hobby Quick Hits, 11 episodes. You could almost do catch up in one day if you so choose, but definitely check out episode 11, the investment episode, we're calling it, and give me your feedback and your thoughts. It's something I brought a lot of experience to the table with that topic. If I may be so bold, I'm definitely qualified to put my 2 cents in. And I don't want to give away too much of that episode, but if you're going to listen to it. But check it out. It's 20 minutes. And let me know, am I right? Am I wrong? Where am I wrong? Do you agree, disagree, that sort of thing? We love feedback on this program, that program, and anything we do. That's how we get better. As always, is you telling us what's wrong, what's right, what you want to hear, what you want to see. So we appreciate that. We're all ears. So check that show out if you haven't, and let me know what you think. Let's keep this intro short and sweet and get on with the show.
Are you ready?
Time for this week's
Incoming!
product releases. All right, once again, we got to preface this by saying with the shutdown, although things are slowly starting to open up, these are all tentative. The upper deck portion of the product should be fine, as their factory or printing is not affected. So all the items for the next week are on the 13th. There are 5 in total, and they are as follows. 2020 Panini Prism Baseball. Scheduled 2019-20 Panini National Treasures Basketball. 2019-20 SP Hockey. 2019-20 SP Authentic Hockey. And 2019-20 Panini Chronicles Soccer. So stay tuned on the Panini front, but the Upper Deck products should be fine. Again, things are starting to slowly open up, so many of these may not come out on that date, but maybe a few weeks after, depending on how operational they get. But we're going to do this segment regardless at moving forward.
Sports Card Nation Podcast is your weekly hobby and sports podcast. Now on tons of platforms including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and many more. Listened to in 44 different countries globally, Sports Card Nation is one of the most interactive podcasts around, providing great content, giveaways, and some of the hobby's best interview guests without time constraints. Thousands can't be wrong. We want to thank all the wonderful listeners around the world, our awesome guests on the show, and our tremendous sponsors making us what we are today. Remember, without you, there's no us.
Pastime Marketplace offers a line of durable graded card cases made for collectors who want high-quality graded card storage that is virtually indestructible. Their cases are waterproof, dustproof, airtight, and designed to protect your valuable collection. Check them all out at www.pastimemarketplace.com. Protect your best with the best. It's time for What's Cracking. All right, the segment of the show where we delve into news in the hobby. Sort of quiet, to be honest with you. Quiet news week in comparison to other news weeks. But I wanted to elaborate more on the Bowman First Edition now that it's been out a little bit, and we can kind of see how it's trending, what it's doing, how sales are going. I mentioned on this very program that I did try to get some, but obviously, as most are reporting, the site had its failures, down, couldn't even log on, and that's something you expect more from the Panini side of things with their server issues. It was very Untops-like, to be honest with you. I don't know if it was intentional. They weren't prepared. I have a feeling that there's not as much of this Bowman First Edition out there as some may think. I know the autos are very difficult. Again, this is being produced by a printer not shut down, and so their capabilities, I'm not sure what they are. So I don't know how much of this stuff was made and printed. I don't suspect it's a lot. I actually like the design. I know a lot of people bag on the 2020 Bowman design. I actually like the design. What I would have liked to seen with the first edition logo, it's small on there, which is fine. I would have wanted, it would have been a little sharper if it was like, if you remember back in the day, the Stadium Club, the first day logo was raised in silver and sort of holographic almost looking. I would have liked to see something like that, a little more snazzier. rather than just a printed first edition. But, with limited capabilities and places shut down, I guess you get what you get, and Topps has to do what they have to do. Prices are up there. I was hoping to get some on the secondary market. I don't think I'm going to take that plunge at $31 to $35 a pack for 10 cards. And the biggest card, the guy that's driving the product, as we all know, is Yankees young teenage phenom prospect Jason Dominguez. And his base cards are going for between $150 and $200. That's not colored parallels. These are just the regular base cards. And so, it's got a lot of the draft picks as well. I like the product. I just, at the price point, I'm probably going to grab some singles, which is traditionally now, the last few years, kind of how I go into things now. I open a lot less wax. A lot of the wax I buy now, frankly, I buy to put away with, frankly, the purpose to resale later as it appreciates in value. I think that's the, I mentioned this on Twitter a day or two ago, is I've my approach now is to buy singles and lots. Any wax I buy and open is very minimal, and I buy wax with the long-term goal that it's going to appreciate in value, and then I'm going to sell it. Right now I have a box of the 2018-19, the Mega 42 card box, the 2018-19 Optic, and that's the Luka rookie year. And that box now, I got it back at the time when it released at like $24, and that box now is over $200. And so now I post a question on my Twitter feed: do I sell it now? Do I wait even more? Does this have more ceiling? And so that's my approach now with wax. I buy it, whether you like it or not. I buy it really with the intent to sell later on at an appreciative value. I open a lot less. I buy a lot more singles and lots and collections. And it's just the last couple years, for me, now I'm only speaking for me, it's really been the recipe for some success as someone who sells and buys. It's worked for me. I'm not trying to sell you like Tony Robbins and do this, but for me it's been great. And I know a lot of people like to open wax. I do too, and I still do. I don't want to make it like I don't open packs anymore. I just open a lot less, and I get it, but opening wax, unless you hit, the deal, unless you hit something of significance, it's generally a losing proposition. And I wanted to stop losing proposition. When you're younger, maybe you can lose in proposition a little bit more, but when you get older and smarter, like I said, the thing I've done the last 2 or 3 years, less wax open, more wax purchased to in turn resell later, and buying singles and lots and collections. I wish I honestly had started that sooner. I wish I've done it for that exact way 5 or 10 years rather than the 3 or 4 that I have. And so you live and learn. I've been doing this a long time. It took a lot of trial and error to you can only get beat over the head so many times before you figure out I'm not going to get beat over the head, and buy that box for $200 and pull $40 in sellable cards out of it. So you pivot, you adjust, you adapt, and so that's been my MO the last few years, and it's worked for me. So Bowman First Edition, again, Topps dropped the ball. Bad job by them with the site issues. Secondary market, $31 to $35 a pack. Everyone says, well, when the regular Bowman comes out, this stuff's going to die down. I think some of the hype will die down. I think some of the pricing might surprise you, and it'll still hold pretty steady. I don't think there's as much out there as we may believe. So, but time will tell. Going on, speaking of Yankees that are expensive, There's another Yankee that's expensive when it comes to cards, and his name is Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter signed that exclusive contract with Topps, and they didn't waste no time. That stuff, before that ink was dry on that Jeter contract, they were rolling out signed Topps Now stuff, and the prices on some of the stuff is incredible. But you know it's going to sell. It's Jeter. He's sort of like, I always view Jeter as sort of like the Michael Jordan of baseball. A lot of people loved him, had that, could do really no wrong even when he did. Has that look everyone loved, just very popular. And his stuff's going to sell, whether you agree with the price or not, which I don't. I mean, you're talking four figures during current times is kind of off-putting, but his stuff's going to sell. Topps knows what they're doing here with Jeter. They know, this is a guy that played in their backyard. Topps is a New York City company. Jeter's become a New York City god, and so they're hedging their bets here. I think it's probably going to pay off. I'm not going to contribute to the success with what some of his stuff is going for, but people are going to buy it. He's one of the most popular players in the sport, and he's retired. That's the crazy thing. Newly minted Hall of Famer. That's going to help as well. And so, Topps is going to do all right by this deal, I suspect. And if if it works out for both parties, maybe they even extend the collaboration. Jeter's going to be in the cover boy for the Transcendent. I'm not sure this year or the next year. He's going to be in, we're probably going to see Derek Jeter in the Garbage Pail Kids. You're probably going to see Derek Jeter in the Star Wars releases. They're going to maximize their Derek Jeter potential. They invested, no details were disclosed other than 3 years, but they invested a lot of money in Mr. Jeter, and they're going to get all the bang for the buck that they can. You better believe it. So there you go with that. A gentleman we had on this very program, Professor Brad Baluchian. He's the author of the Wax Pack book, which is #1 on the Amazon baseball books. And there's even some rumblings that Hollywood may be looking to make a movie about the book. So stay tuned there. Again, early stages, but congrats to the professor. It's got the #1 baseball book, and that thing is really blowing up. So good guy, worked hard, put in that effort, and the fruits of his labor are paying off. So if you haven't read that book, go check it out. Michael Jordan stuff continues to see dramatic price increases and saleability. Goes without saying, that Last Dance effect. I've bought a few things, but I've went on the cheaper. One set, I bought 2 sets. I bought one opened and one sealed. Some of you OG guys will remember this if you're old like me. In 1991, Nike released a 6-card trading card set. Came in a little box with a little seal on it, and it was based on the commercials that he made with Spike Lee, Mars Blackman, and their ad cards for those commercials. And so it's a little 6-card set. I don't think it's a short printed thing or rare or anything like that. But you got to remember, in 1991, here we are in 2020. These things are 29 years old. My original ones, I probably had 5 or 6 sets. I either sold them at my store back in the day. Some might have got thrown out as we moved. And probably a lot of these sets got thrown away. Kids went to college. Parents got rid of them. So I don't know how many exist. Again, I'm not saying they're short printed, but I remembered this little set, and I loved it. So I went on eBay and I grabbed a couple before I think they will continue to go up. And so again, I bought one open to thumb through the cards, bring back some memories, and I also bought a sealed set from 29 years old. This set still has that tamper-proof seal intact, and that I don't think there's going to be a plethora of. So I'm going to keep that one intact, probably put in a little snap case or something just to keep it from getting beat up too much, and that's going to be my sentimental PC. I don't have a lot of PC, if you know anything about me. I've gotten kind of away from that, but this one's probably going to go in my PC. I just think 29 years later, there's probably not a ton of sealed Nike 1991 Michael Jordan Spike Lee sets. So that one, I'll probably post it. I haven't even got that one yet. That one's supposed to come any day now. I'll probably post a picture of it on our social medias when it gets here. I know many of you do remember that set, if you know. And one of my favorite non-mainstream sets, not produced back in the day by Topps, Upper Deck, Score, Fleer, Donruss. It was produced by Nike, and had Michael Jordan and Spike Lee on it, Mars Blackman, and pretty popular. And you don't see a ton of them though. If you search on eBay, not as many come up as I thought I'd find, but they're out there. One little story to kind of close this segment out. I've said in the past I'm going to try to bring a little personal flair to the hobby news segment. So I wanted to talk about a funny story that happened to me as first an 11-year-old and then later on as a 17-year-old. I told you a few episodes back about me and Deion Sanders being in the elevator together, getting him to sign a ball for me, yada, yada, yada. So here's another story along those lines. The year is 1983. I was raised by my grandparents. We took a trip. They had a place in Florida. We'd go sometimes, and we went down to Florida, the home of the Fort Lauderdale Yankees minor league team. And we went to a Fort Lauderdale Yankees games, which we did when we were down there, most of the time. And at 11, I wanted autographs. I wanted to get to see the players, and I got to meet a lot of players during their minor league career in that fashion. And so we're waiting near the clubhouse at for the players to get in cars or into the bus. This is single A. It's 1983, single A. And the Yankees had a prospect at that time. His name was Orestes Estrada. You might remember him from ESPN. He did Baseball Tonight. He became a huge legend in the Japanese Baseball League, which he went to after his Major League Baseball career, which was sort of short, was over. He caught on there, hit 40 home runs a couple years there, and so made a name for himself there as well. So the year's 1983. He's a young prospect, single A. And everyone kind of came out, and my grandfather said, "You ready?" And I said, "Nah, maybe there's someone else." And we're just getting ready to leave. The bus had left, and my grandfather is like, "John, the bus is gone. They're all gone." Had a little notepad with an autograph book kind of thing. And we're just getting ready to turn around and leave, and Orestes Estrada comes out. And he says, we're really the only two left, me and my grandfather. And he says to me and my grandfather, "Did the bus leave?" And we're like, "Yeah, it left." He goes, "Oh, man, that's my ride." And my grandfather said, "Well, where do you got to go?" And he's like, "I got to go to the hotel." And so my grandfather said to him, "I know you don't know us, but I'd gladly give you a ride. I don't want you to be stranded here." And he said, "Oh, man, I appreciate that." He goes, "Hang on." So he runs back into the locker room, the clubhouse, and he comes out with a cracked bat. His bat has his name on it, printed on it and everything. And he goes, "Here, this is for your grandson. I appreciate you giving me a ride." And so he gives me the bat. I'm on cloud nine. Even though it's cracked, I got a bat from a professional ball player. He gets in the vehicle. Obviously, I'm in the back seat. My grandfather starts talking to him. I'm just in love with the bat, fondling that thing. And my grandfather says, "Hey, are you hungry, Orestes?" My wife, my grandmother, makes some amazing out of this world pasta. That's what we had. We have some left. If you have time and you're hungry, you're welcome to come over where we are, and you can eat. And he goes, "Oh man, I actually am very hungry. Is that okay? I appreciate it." My grandfather said, "No, I insist. We want you to." So we go to my house in Florida at the time, and here's the rest of the stride at my kitchen table, my grandparents' kitchen table, all four of us, and we're eating pasta. I'm eating again. because how often does a professional player come to your house for a meal? I got the bat at the table, like in the chair next to me. I remember my grandma saying, "Don't have that at the table. Go set that somewhere else," which I did. And we're sharing stories, and I'm mostly listen at 11, still in awe and of the bat as well. And then we took Orestes to the hotel where he needed to go to, and he thanked us, shook my grandfather's hand, gave me a high five, said, "Oh, I appreciate you fellas' generosity. That meal was incredible too." And in the process of all this, we forgot to get the bat actually signed. So I had this cracked bat. We came back home to New York. We didn't live permanently in Florida. It was kind of like a summer house. And that was it. But I had this cracked Orestes Lestrade bat. This, again, 1983. Well, now flash ahead to 1989. I'm in Syracuse, New York, where I am now. And at this point, Orestes was kind of on the backside of his major league career. He was still trying to make it back, but he was in the minors. It's actually his last minor league year in the United States. 1989, he was with the Buffalo Bisons, which was the Pirates minor league team at the time. And he came into Syracuse. And I have the bat, and I went to a lot of Syracuse games. And now I'm 17. I'm not 11 no more. And I'm like, I'm going to go to this game. Orestes Lestrade's in town. I still got this bat. How funny would it be if I bring it to the game? And I wonder if he remembers that. I know it's 6 years ago. I was 11. I look a lot older even though I'm only 17. Wonder if he'll remember everything and coming over. And so I waited near the Bison's dugout before the game. And he's walking in from the outfield, and it was sort of a kind of drizzly day, dark, a little chilly. There was really not a lot of people there, and truthfully, I think it was me and maybe one other younger kid near me, near the dugout, and I yelled out, "Orestes!" and I kind of held up the bat, and he came right over. He didn't know who I was yet by any stretch of imagination. And I said, "You're going to think this is crazy, but do you remember me?" And I kind of told him I didn't even have to finish the story. And he goes, "Holy crap. Are you kidding me? That's you? What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm originally from New York City. We were in Florida. I gave him the whole spiel. I live in Syracuse now. This is that bat from 1983, 6 years ago." He goes, "Are you, blah, bleep, bleep, me?" He goes, "You still have it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I still got it, man. I love this thing. I'll never not have it." I go, "But and all that, I was so in awe at 11 when you came over, I never had you sign it." He goes, "Oh, well, let's take care of that today." And he signed it, and Sharpie gave me a big hug. We talked about, he asked me how I was, how my grandparents were. At that point, my grandfather had passed away, so I told him that. I felt terrible. "Well, I'm sorry to hear that," all that stuff. And he was just in awe that, I was up in New York. I still had the bat. I came to the game with it. So he signed it. We talked a little bit, and it was a great moment. I still have this bat here in 2020. It's in my studio office here. Matter of fact, I'll post it on the Twitter account tomorrow or Friday, and you have the story now to go along with that picture when I post it. So little throwback story. I thought it was pretty interesting, at least to me. Hopefully you found it somewhat interesting.
I know the chunky that left these chunkies. Newman! Open the door, Newman. I know you're in there.
Those sound bites means it's none other than time for Newman's own ramblings, the part of the show where I take a question that I get asked off the air via either email or DM, and I ask it to myself on the air and answer it.
John, you seem like an astute man.
Thank you, Mr. Walken.
Maybe you can help explain something to me.
Well, I'll give it my best shot. This question comes way of Instagram from user baseballcards315, And he asked, John, there seems to be an explosion of hobby content, podcasts on platforms and YouTube, and even more so since the corona pandemic. What are your thoughts on that? So you're right. You're exactly right. I think now with a lot of the downtime, people are picking up the microphone, so to speak, turning on the camera. I'm all about content creation. I was that new guy almost 2 years ago myself. And it's funny. I've only been in doing this now about 17, 18 months. And with all the new influx, I feel like a grizzled veteran. I'm not going to mention any names to protect identities, but I've had some other podcast folks that have come after me ask me questions, hey, what about this? Or what platform should I do this? Or how do you do this? Or how do you get sponsors? Blah, all podcast type questions. And if you know anything about me, I'll reach out, or I shouldn't say I'll answer any question. I'll help you in any way I can. I'm always been like that. I was raised like that. So yeah, there you go. Ask me anything you want. So, here at 17, 18 months, with all this new influx, I'm sort of kind of the old man on the porch, even at 17 months. And now I'm exaggerating there, but there's just so much new content that's how I feel. And, like I said, people have asked me, questions, and I've tried to help them out. What do I think of it? I think it's great. I think there's, it's like a bathtub. I think there is a tipping point. There's only so much water that can be in that tub. I will say this. I'm glad I got into the industry at the time I did. I think the waters are very difficult now to kind of get a foothold in, if you will. I don't think it's impossible by any stretch of imagination. The content's going to sell itself. That's the bottom line. What do I think's going to happen? I think once we get past this pandemic, we have 44 million people not working. So people are going bored out of their gourd, picking up a mic, buying a camera, which is cool. This is America. I support that. Me and Eric Norton talked about this on his appearance a few episodes back. But I think once people get back to work, it'll be interesting to see how many of these new programs kind of make it through. And I've read, if you look on platforms and social media, it's like a junkyard and a graveyard of started up hobby podcasts that, 2 to 5 episodes, and that was it. And, hey, E for effort, it's not easy. And again, I don't want this to be pat myself on the back. Anyone that does this, especially on a weekly basis, if you produce a show every week, then in this case, with this show, we've got to line up a interview guest each week. I know every once in a while we have a week where we don't have one, but for the most part, it's every week. There's a lot of logistics going into that. I've always said, I believe I've mentioned on this very program, Sports Card Nation, I coached varsity high school baseball and football. And that was a time-consuming privilege that I had and an honor to do. I wouldn't change that for a minute, the time I did that. But if you anyone out there that's listening to this that knows anything about varsity football and baseball, my day started at like 4:30 a.m., 5 o'clock a.m., went to work. After work, went to practice, came home, ate dinner, watched a little TV, took a shower, and repeat. And it was long days. I loved it. You have to love it, or it'll kill you. If you don't love it, that would have killed people. People don't last long in coaching profession. I lasted, 10 double-digit years total on the high school front. And so my son, just to give you the kind of cliff notes, I had the joy and privilege of coaching my son in baseball and football at high school level. That's pretty rare. And his senior year, the football team, we went undefeated, won the championship in the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, and it was a good opportunity for me as he was graduating and moving on. It's a young man's kind of game, coaching, and it was a good segue to let someone else come in and go out sort of on that note as well and be that last I coach. And I miss some of it. I love the kids, and when I see them out in public today, they'll give me a hug. Hey, coach, miss your man house things. And these guys, I just can't believe how big they got. They tower over me. But, that I miss. I miss the kids. I don't miss the long hours and the long days and, the grind. It's a grind. Don't let anyone sugarcoat it. So now I had some extra time. I wasn't coaching, and this filled the void. I was doing another podcast as a guest, a sports one where I brought a little cards into it. It was on Fridays. And then my work schedule changed, so I couldn't be on that show no more. And this was something I had thought about. And so I took the plunge, and the rest is history. Here we are, episode 75. And I'm so glad I did. But if I'm going to be honest with you, if I was still coaching, this show wouldn't exist. There's no way I could do both at all. It'd be like I probably could do Hobby Quick Hits, my other show, and even that would be very difficult to do while coaching. So this sort of took the place of my coaching career. And I'm going to be honest with you. You're probably tired of hearing me say my age. I'm 47. I've been married, I think, 23 years. That's how you know you've been married a long time. You got to kind of do addition and subtraction. But I've been married 23 years. I have a great wife who allows me to be me and do the things I like to do. And we have a great marriage, And that's my next point, is I see a lot of these younger podcast hosts, God bless them, and many of them doing a bang-up great job. I'm fans of their show. And I don't want to paint with a broad brush here. Well, when I see someone in their early 20s or even, early 20s, even 19, 20, 21, doing a podcast and knowing how time consuming these actually are, maybe I'm not looking at it the right way, and I apologize if that's the case, but I look back when I was in my 20s. Now, granted, when I was in my 20s, we didn't have social media, podcasting didn't exist, but even if it did, I wouldn't have not done it. I was just at 20, guys. I was out with friends. I had the store from age 20 to 24, so that had me kind of locked in. But I was doing stuff. I was going to concerts. I was doing shows out of state. I was going to concerts out of state. I was never home. Never home. I didn't pick my mail up till 3 or 4 days at a time. I was having as much fun as I could. And I knew, in my 20s, get this haul in because, not that I wasn't grown up already, but life's not going to always be fun and games to that level when you're in your 20s. And so I lived it up. I had the store, I was traveling, shows, concerts, partying with friends, to be point blank with you. And so when I see someone in their 20s, and again, to each their own, doing a podcast and a lot of content, and I almost sort of feel bad. I know this is going to sound weird. I almost sort of feel bad for them. Are they missing out? Are they missing out on socializing and doing stuff? Because they're going to be in their 30s and 40s, and you can't go back. You can't go back. If I didn't do the stuff I did in my 20s, I would have never got to experience it, never got to do it. And I'd probably have some regrets, which I don't really have at this point. And so when I see someone young at that age, just kind of, I did a show on Hobby Quick Hits about different forms of addiction. I sort of worry, are they being consumed by this machine? I do a lot of stuff, but I also do a lot of stuff outside the hobby. I have a job. I work 50 hours a week. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I play competitive softball when we're playing, obviously with the pandemic. That's not the case right now, but under normal circumstances, I play softball 2 nights a week. I wear a lot of hats, and I manage my schedule and balance my time out, if I may say so, pretty good. And I just worry when I see, again, I know it's not my place to worry. It's sort of it is none of my business, but I'm a dad of a 20-year-old, so it's the inner dad of me coming out. It's that coach, I always worried about my guys, and I kind of worry about people. I'm just like that. It's in my nature. And so when I see someone, going back to that, when I see someone in their 20s and they're producing a lot of content, and it's great, God bless them, but then that inner dad comes out, and I'm like, are they missing out on socializing? Are they kind of shuttering themselves in and missing opportunities to have fun and do other things? I'm sure what they're doing is fun, but there's more to life than in front of this microphone. There is, and there needs to be. And so I wonder if, as much as they may enjoy the process of what they're doing, I just hope, and that's all I can do because I don't know them personally, let's say, I just hope they're not missing out on other opportunities and socialization and doing things with friends and traveling and this and that. Things I did and other people did when they're in their 20s. If they're balancing their schedule out, great, then God bless them, But I worry about them in that capacity. But content creation, going back to the original question, is at an all-time high. A lot of it's largely due to the downtime that 44 million people unemployed will bring, unfortunately, what we're dealing with. When this thing kind of progresses and we flatten the curve, as they say, and people get back to work and we get back to some sort of normalcy or new normalcy, it'll be interesting to see how much of that content creation survives that. And for their sake, I hope it does. I don't root against people. It's not in my nature. I try to root for people until they give me a reason not to. I can root against you. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge Steeler fan. Believe me, I'm rooting against 53 other people wearing a different color jersey, right? But by nature, I root for humans, okay? But unless someone gives me a reason not to, and then that's a whole another show. But I wish everyone the best. I wish everyone success. I mean, that's just being a good person, which I hope I am, and I hope I fit that bill. And so it's an interesting time. If I can give any advice, I know this wasn't part of the original question, but like if I say anything, do whatever show you kind of want to do. It's your show, but when you have that much content, you're going to have to change, you're going to have to be a little bit different, whatever capacity that is. I know a lot of shows sort of just kind of review information that's already on the internet, sort of like a Twitter review. I've already got all that. So for me, I got that. Some people might like it. I'm not, again, to each their own. One of the reasons we went to being an interview show on episode 4, quite frankly, I don't know if I've ever said this before, is because there wasn't a lot of interview shows out there, regular ones. Eric and the Fat Packs was doing it. Drew from Let Me Get That Potograph. But a lot of the other shows were just the host just talking about the week in review. I already went through the week. I already know, this is I've seen the movie before. I don't need to see the movie again. So I knew I didn't want to kind of do that because I was, using my own personal preference. So I wanted to keep it fresh and having an interview guest. I've said, and I've rambled on in a section, which is why it's called Newman's Ramblings, but less of me and more of a guest is a recipe for this show. It's worked. The numbers bear that out. I can tell you that without going into details. And I think it's not easy. Like I said, we talked about that already. You got to line up a guest each week. You got to logistics. But to me, that's the beauty, because no two shows will be the same. When you have a different guest on every week, the show's going to be so fresh, so new each week. Even when we've had guests on more than once, their second interviews are much different than the first, and it's done purposefully. I'm having them back on to talk about different things that we didn't get to on their first appearance. So having an interview guest for us is the recipe for success. It keeps the show brand new, literally every week. When we do even the hobby segment, what's cracking, I try to even cover that, if you notice, folks, with some information that maybe is not just easily, put some personal inflection in there as well. Because the numbers, what stuff's going for, this product being released, most of the people who've listened to the show know this already. I'm not breaking any news here. It's all over. Social media is so huge. You know when Bowman First Edition come out. You know how many cards are in the pack. You know what happened. So I think we're an interview-driven show. And so to the new creators, do you enjoy it? Enjoy the process. You got to enjoy the process. If you don't enjoy it, you're not gonna make it. You're not gonna last very long. So enjoy the process, but live your life outside of the microphone too. I think some of them, not a lot of them. I think there's some cases where someone can get consumed by the mic. And it's going to be interesting, and not just to podcast creation, but even when this pandemic is all said and done, there's going to be two things. There's going to be a lot of babies, and there's going to be a lot of divorces. And I hope not. Again, I root for people. Well, with the babies, I'm not rooting against that, if that's what that family wants. But the divorces, I hope I'm wrong. But I got a feeling, when people are stuck in their house with someone maybe they thought they knew, but they didn't know, things get real. So I think divorce lawyers are going to do very, very well this pandemic.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Commence interview sequence.
All right, real happy to have my next guest on the 101 Card Shop guest line. He's the founder and editor of Sports Collectors Daily, but he has a storied career in the sports industry and in the hobby itself. And again, that's a website that I'm very fond of and familiar with. Many of the stories we talk about on the show are sourced from there. So, Rich Mueller, thanks for being on the show.
John, glad to be with you.
Let's start with, before, if you will, before Sports Collectors Daily. You're an accomplished TV sports anchor, reporter, received the Edward R. Murrow Awards more than once. And, I guess my first question is, does that kind of background help give you sort of an advantage in the sports card industry, would you say?
Well, it kind of lends itself to what I do. I mean, I did spend most of my life in broadcast journalism. I spent a year actually doing play-by-play in the old Continental Basketball Association, if you're old enough to remember that.
I am.
Spent about 25 years in television, and then about 20 years ago, I just kind of started looking for something different. I kind of saw the magazines and other media start to move away from the print side, and saw an opportunity to start a daily website and kind of do something with the hobby that I'd been a part of for such a long time. I've been a collector since I was a little kid, like most people. And so, there were a few blogs out there, a few websites, but at that time, this is back in 2006, they really weren't updated that often. So I just kind of felt there was enough going on in the hobby industry, whatever you want to call it, that I could put fresh content up every day and hopefully attract an audience and maybe turn it into a business. And I committed to doing at least 20 fresh stories every week, and it's kind of evolved a little bit over the first few years, but we still keep that commitment where you can go to the website every day, sportscollectorsdaily.com, Monday through Friday, and there's going to be new stories there. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely helped, that background and not just knowing a little about journalism and writing and communications, but, having the ability to do it in a short period of time. I used to do 2 sportscasts a night, and, that was a lot of writing and a lot of, video editing there, but it definitely that mindset of being in the news gathering business definitely helped with what I do.
Yeah, so deadlines don't scare you, in other words.
No, not really. They're not always a lot of fun, but they don't scare me too much.
Yeah, and so I know obviously talk about, it's obviously a hobby, your hobby background. Did you started as a kid?
Yeah, like everybody else,
Yeah.
Started as a little kid. Mom or dad brings you home a pack of cards, and at the time I was growing up, there was no there was no internet and barely color television. So when you saw the guys' pictures on the cards, it really brought them to life. It was really exciting. That's something that a lot of people who are a little bit younger kind of don't understand, is that there was one game of the week in baseball, and basketball on television was occasionally you'd get a college game of the week, but there wasn't this flood of constant broadcast games. So we associated with sports through our cards, through baseball, basketball, football, hockey, whatever you collected. And so my favorite card as a kid was the 1969 Topps Lou Brock, and I became a big Brock fan as a kid, and for a bunch of different reasons. But if you look at that card, it's just gorgeous. It's there's tremendous. The color is just amazing. It really stands out among all the 69s, and so I just it's stuff like that really gets you engaged when you're a kid, and so I stopped here and there in my teens and early 20s, but for the most part I've collected my entire life. Slowed down a little bit lately just because I don't have enough room anymore in this house I have. So my collection's pretty old school, mostly vintage cards, but pre-war to the 80s. But I also have some 20th and 21st century stuff, not a lot, and then a lot of old publications, programs, and stuff that I acquired throughout the years, and just a lot of different things like that, a complete set of Heartland statues, and just different things like that. But my background is pretty much the way a lot of guys who grew up. I grew up late 60s throughout the 70s, and then graduated high school and college in the 80s. But it's a pretty typical timeline, I think, for a lot of people, although I was one of those that never stopped. Yeah,
and it's funny you mentioned that. It's something I wanted to bounce off you. I'm born in 72, so I'm a little bit younger, but catching up to you anyway. But for me, I got my start in 79 as a 7-year-old. Similar story, my grandfather bought me a 79 baseball pack, got a Reggie Jackson. I'm a New York City kid. Reggie was like the fourth card in, and the rest is history. Yeah. When that era, our era, if you will, I hate to coin it like that, but no other way. We were kind of sports fans first, and the card just kind of was a natural progression to do. And I think the kids in today's era, it's not exactly the same. I think a lot of them, frankly, especially teenagers, now we got more, when we opened packs, we weren't even thinking about what these things were going to be worth or what they were worth at the time. And now that whole philosophy has shifted to value and what things are worth. And so a lot of the kids of today's age, it's just, hey, I can do this with this, or I can get this for that. It's kind of shifted. I wouldn't, for me, Rich, I wouldn't change anything. I appreciate the fact, even though I do sell cards now, I appreciate that I started off sort of in that era, in that capacity, because it just means a little bit different and whatnot. I just thought, I'd ask you, as someone from the general same area and someone who does the website, your kind of thoughts on how it's changed over the years to current day.
Yeah, it's definitely a different kind of experience. At the time when we were growing up, there was one set, and Topps was the company that produced them, and you went from one season to the next. I think we kind of generally gravitated toward baseball, but there wasn't much competition for your eyeballs. You collected cards because it was just something to do that brought you a little closer to the games. Now with the video games and all different types of online experiences, there's so much for young people to be involved in. I'm not saying it was better in my day or anything like that. I don't know if I'd have collected cards if I had all the options available to me back at that time. Who knows? But it was a great time, to grow up and experience cards in their purest form. That, like you mentioned, there was no real value associated with that. Changed a little bit in the late 70s. I started going to card shows when I was a teenager, and by the mid-late 70s, definitely early 80s, there was a business aspect to it, and you kind of went to the shows and you saw that the older cards were worth money, and it kind of changed you a little bit. But for the most part, when you were growing up and collecting the cards, you just wanted to complete a set, and that was the big goal. That was the big goal to it. But it's the cards obviously are way better now in terms of the quality, the amazing things that they're doing for it. We all know that, and it's so it's just a different kind of a different way of collecting. There's no way you could ever hope to gather everything that you wanted. When I was growing up, even though it probably wasn't possible, in the back of your mind, you thought at some point, I want to collect every set, or something from every set that's out there. Well, it wasn't practical, but it was a goal that you kind of thought, hey, maybe if I have enough money and later on in life I enjoy that. Well, now it's obviously impossible, but there's benefits to both, and I think it's the thing about not having as a kid so many different things available to you. Cards were just something that they were accessible. They were in every grocery store, drugstore that you could you went to had them, and they had gum inside, and so it was a cheap way to enjoy sports and do a little collecting. Mom and Dad usually didn't care too much as long as you didn't spend all your money on cards.
You make another great point. Is it seemed that the cards were even more accessible, even though there was obviously a lot less comparative to nowadays. It was at every corner store, every market. They were usually right towards the front of the counter. Yeah. And, it's funny. I joke on this show that I really didn't care so much about the gum. My friends wanted my gum, and I would trade them that gum for like some of their cards, all of the Yankees, all the Mets, or what have you. I got my cavity still, but I got them just a different route. You know what I mean? It wasn't through so much the Topps gum as Jolly Ranchers and other forms of sugar that I participated in. But, it's funny looking back at that time and reminiscing and knowing where we are now. I mean, like you said, the technology's better, social media now that we have, grading's a huge thing now that wasn't even in our thoughts at that time, and just where I always say if you went away for a couple years out of the hobby and came back a couple years later, is so much you would have missed, even in a 2 to 3 year span with just what they're doing now, technology wise and techniques and designs, and it's just crazy to think about cards then to the hobby now and whatnot. So back to Sports Collector Dale. You started it in 2006. I mean, you can correct. You're sort of you're one man show, aren't you? You kind of do everything.
I am in some regard, yeah. I mean, we've been able to bring on a few freelance writers that have been a really great help over the last several years, and contribute on a regular basis. And but in terms of the overall the business part of it, and the majority of the writing still comes from me. So it's a long day and it's a long week. People don't kind of realize how much goes into it, but we produce at least 4 fresh pieces of content every day, and that adds up. You're talking 20 a week. There's now in our archive we have over 14,000 stories fully searchable in our on the website. So it's I hate to think about all the number of words that I've typed over the years, but I need a week's vacation just after thinking about it. But it's been really a lot of fun. It's something I really enjoy, and there's always that was the big question when I started, is there enough going on in the hobby and to do this, and we cover it all, everything from the new card releases to the auction results and auction previews, and there have been some great finds over the years. Industry related news, there's always something happening in the NBA now sells its own game worn gear, and so there's always things that are happening, and that was a question that I was able to answer pretty early. Was it's like any other day in the news business. Some days are slow and some days are fast, and but I've never had more than just a few days where we haven't had, at least 4 pieces of fresh content on there. So, and that's kind of what I felt like when I started this was, we didn't really have publications at the time were kind of slow to transition from print to digital.
Yep.
And I just thought, there were so many stories that I saw working where I did in the mainstream media that, maybe there would be a story in a paper in Kansas City or in LA or and people didn't see those. And I thought, I had the ability to be able to search and see those stories. And I thought, I've got the ability to find those things. And so why not collect all that stuff and bring it in and let people see it that would normally never see it if they didn't live in that area. So that all kind of played into it. And, I don't know what I hear, all different kinds of figures in terms of how much is spent on this industry in the course of a year, but it's a big business and there's a lot going on. And fortunately for us, people are interested enough to read about it every day.
Yeah, and you guys do a great job. Like you said, you cover the whole gamut, even the bad stuff. You have to do it. It's due from the broadcasting and the journalist side. You got to cover those negative stories. They do impact our industry, our hobby, good, bad, and indifferent. And the thing I love what you do, Rich, you do a great job at it. A lot of times, sometimes you read articles or pieces, and you kind of can tell they're trying to kind of persuade you to think a certain way. But you're, not to be political, but you're very nonpartisan. You know what I mean? You're just reporting, hey, here's what's going on, and you do with this, you choose to feel how you need to feel. And a lot of times you don't see that in journalism all the time. And so you do a great job with that. You cover everything, which I think is refreshing as well. When you started that in 2006, do you have any idea? Here we are in 2020 that where the site would go and where you'd be, even 14 years later.
That was always kind of the thought in the back of my head was, maybe if I work hard enough and it does take off, that maybe it can be a long-term thing. And it took a while. I didn't know what to expect. It took a little while for us to gain some traction. Yep. But then we started getting social media really helped. I tried to embrace that. And that helped grow the audience tremendously when Facebook and Twitter kind of became mainstream and some of the other social media sites. Some stories that we did got attention from, we got links from mainstream media outlets, and I would get interviewed sometimes by, some very large newspapers, and just recently still like ESPN linked to one of our stories on their website, which obviously brought in a huge number of visitors. And so that all helps kind of grow it organically, which is the most important thing of anything. And the collectors started linking to our stories in the forums. And then when we brought on some freelancers, that's been a big help, and the traffic started to grow, and it continues to grow every year. So it's it's kind of played out. One of those things that's played out sort of the way I thought it would, and we were able to bring on some advertisers and pay the bills and attract some other different types of partnerships to bring in revenue. And despite the fact that there's so much content out there now, we still luckily are kind of the go-to source for a lot of folks, and I really, really appreciate that.
Yep, no, I can tell you I'm not shy, I'm not coy about it. I mean, we get a lot of, stuff we talk about on the show. I'm on your site every day, just checking out what's new, what's going on, what I don't know, fill in kind of the gaps, and I don't have any qualms. I shouldn't, I mean, you're doing the work and the due diligence. You should get due credit, and so just tremendous again what you're doing. We're going to step aside for a quick break, but when we come back, more with Sports Collectors Daily, Rich Mueller. The Star Stock selling platform has launched. They are now in beta. Currently, you can deposit, purchase cards, view your collection, and flip those cards back on the marketplace, with so much more to be built. Star Stock is building a sports card marketplace aimed to be faster and cheaper for flipping sports cards than any other platform. They are currently looking for people who want to submit their cards to sell on this new platform. Here's what they offer: 5% commissions, no ingestion fees. You send in your cards and they do all the work. Cards are guaranteed and secure in their vault, and you can choose to ship cards back at any time. You can buy, flip, store, or ship cards with the click of a button. It's that easy. If you're interested in getting involved as a seller, contact Mike at starstock.com. That's Mike at starstock.com. Starstock is only looking for rookie cards and prospects of current players. Again, for more details, call Mike at starstock.com. We are back with Rich Mueller. Let's talk about, you've obviously been in the industry a while now yourself. What we're going through now with COVID-19 is really uncharted territory in the industry. You know, we've had different things happen before. Obviously 9/11. We've had even other, flus and H1N1 and SARS, but never, obviously, to this level. And surprisingly, at this point, the hobby still, considering everything going on in the economy, the hobby's still doing fairly well. Now, I've said on this show, I think that's really, occurring because of how well it was doing before the pandemic really took hold. And we're they sort of had a good stronghold, and it's carried through. As things progress, if this thing extends further, it'll be interesting to see. I just want to, someone who does have their finger on the pulse, just your thoughts on kind of what I just said, what's going on with the pandemic and the hobby.
Yeah, it's definitely something that even though you read about what was going on in Europe and other places, I don't think anybody really could appreciate or expect what was going to happen here and how quickly it happened. And I didn't know if people would pull back in terms of, collectors or whether they'd continue as usual. But I had a feeling just as things started to roll forward that with so many people working from home, let's face it, not everyone works 8 hours at their job, so they're not working 8 hours from home either, Everybody's sneaking a look at some website that's collector-oriented when they're at their job if their employer isn't too strict about it. So, I thought because of that maybe we would see a lot of buying and selling, especially, considering the social distancing, and people were a little leery about going out and couldn't go to a restaurant anymore, so people were naturally more sitting in front of their computer or on their phones, or just trying to stay in touch with the hobby. And that's kind of what happened. You look through the entire industry, the auction companies for the most part haven't missed a beat.
Yeah.
The newer releases have slowed a little bit for some reasons out of their control.
Yeah.
The printers are down and that sort of thing. But there's been enough product to keep people happy. I think the breakers are finding, maybe hunting a little bit at this point, and they probably will continue to do that. But there's been enough product to keep, I think, most of the sellers fairly happy, and most of the collectors have been able to find things to buy. The only thing missing seems to be the shows. Still a lot of unanswered questions about that, and not just the national, but the long-term economic impacts of this are really hard to measure. But for now, it's good to see that hopefully most of the businesses and most of the collectors are going to come through this okay. There's a long way to go. Things will change, but and sports is definitely going to be weird for a long time. We're not going to get back to that typical normal fan experience that we had even just 6 weeks ago. If people are patient, we'll get through it, and the hobby as a whole, like you said, it's pretty strong, and it was strong going into this, and if it comes out of it close to what it is now, I mean, I think that's a huge victory for the history of the hobby as a whole, that even a global pandemic can't kill it. Yeah, well said. And you touched on it, the national, the last week of July, the front part of August, they've announced that they're going to make an announcement on May 30th to the decision on whether that takes place. I've heard a rumor that they're, again, everything's hearsay or speculation, but I've heard that they're even maybe considering a different location later in the year. It'd be very hard pressed to think they'll be able to have that at the end of July in Atlantic City. I'm sure you know that the convention center itself is a FEMA COVID-19 medical center at the moment. And New Jersey, I'm here in New York. Those are two of the biggest, hardest hit states with the pandemic here in the U.S. And so
It's wishful thinking, I think. I'm hoping, just in general, for people's well-being, that this thing really takes a downside turn in a positive fashion, that the numbers come way down, and that we can. But I've seen a lot. I don't know about you, Rich. I've seen a lot of some dealers and some people who normally would go to the National every year already come out and say, even if it's held on time, I'm not going to go with what's going on. I don't feel comfortable. And I think you kind of touched on that is even when this thing eventually subsides or passes, is there going to be a new norm? I think you mentioned like sporting events. I'm a handshake guy too. I shake people's hand, look in them in the eye. That's how I was raised. We're going to lose that. Our sporting events, people are going to come back, but everyone's going to have to wear a mask. I'm even talking a year from now, 2 years from now, where everyone will have a face mask, but maybe it'll have like a team logo on it. I mean, where just even thinking ahead, how are we going to come out of it? But what is going to be the new norm?
Yeah, I think that we're a long way from putting fans back in the stands again, and that's one of the things that I brought up. I wrote a column a while back just saying, there's a lot of questions out there. I don't really have any answers, but here's all the questions, and there are a ton of questions, and part of that, it's a sports question, but it also impacts the hobby a little bit, because we're used to watching sports in an enthusiastic theater kind of setting. You see, even if you're not at the game, you see the fans react, and there's excitement around the games, and we watch, Zion Williamson dunk or Mike Trout steal a base, and the crowd's going crazy, and that's what fuels the excitement for sports. And when we're not going to have that, we can still appreciate the performances, but how is that enthusiasm still going to be there in a year if we're still sitting here next spring without fans? I mean, the basketball season starts late next year, and the football, who knows what's going to happen with football, but that's one of the questions I have is are we going to appreciate and really love the games quite as much, or because the excitement maybe isn't quite there, or are we going to be that starved for sports again that we really use the collecting aspect of it to keep connected to the game? I don't know what the answer is there, but it's going to be interesting to see. In terms of the National, it's really hard to imagine. They haven't canceled it yet, but I suspect that's coming. I don't know. I don't have any inside information there, and they've been a little quiet about it, as I would certainly expect. They're just dealing with the guidelines from the state of New Jersey, which has been really hit hard by this, and we're still seeing lots and lots of deaths there, and many new cases, and so it's difficult to see that in just a few months we're going to be able to get back there. And I know a lot of people that are going to be a little bit reluctant, and then in terms of postponing it, without a vaccine, without a huge downturn, our 5,000-6,000 people going to want to come to a show place in one day and be that close to people. It's hard to imagine. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen before we get any closer to that. I do think, and this is something this afternoon that I saw pop up, here in Indiana where I am, they're starting to open up over the next few weeks. And one of the things that they're going to do is allow gatherings of less than 200 people, which to me says, okay, if you have a small card show to where your attendance in this monthly event is 250, 300 people, maybe you limit it to 100 people in the room at the time, or 50 people in the room at the time, however big it is. I think it's possible we could start to see some of these smaller shows come back a little bit, maybe not until June, July. And I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm not a medical guy, but and I'd be a little reluctant to go myself. But there are other people who say, I'm going to take precautions. I'm going to go. I'm going to enjoy my hobby, and hopefully everything will be all right. But I'm just saying that is something that I think we may see, in the months to come as these restrictions loosen up a little bit. That maybe some of that in-person dealing will come back again, and some of the guys, especially this is another thing I wrote about this week, is that we interviewed 3 of the biggest buyers in the hobby. They've been stuck at home. They typically go out on these road trips and buy collections, large collections, and and drive or ship them back to their offices, and they've been stuck at home. But I think maybe as the states start to loosen those restrictions, they'll be able to get out on the road again. It's going to be a gradual process, but I think, that will maybe become a little bit easier to do as we get into the summer and fall. Again, it's hard to say what's going to happen. You look at some of the things that happened with the 1918 Spanish flu.
Yeah.
And, everybody thought it was okay to go back and be social again and have parades and things like that, and it didn't turn out that way. We're a little smarter today, I think, in terms of the precautions we take. The communication is better from the state and federal governments, but it's going to be an interesting rest of the year, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think, you touched on it yourself there, Rich. This isn't going to be like a light switch that you just turn on again and everything goes right back to the levels they were before. This is going to be, it's going to have to be a gradual, slow process. People might get impatient, or impatient people will be impatient, but it's not going to be just an instant thing and everything's, like I Dream of Jeannie, she wiggles her nose and everything, It'd be nice. It's wishful thinking. It'd be nice, but no such luck. And even with the national, little props to them, they've already come out and said that anyone that's paid for a spot or a table, if they're not comfortable, even though they haven't announced an official decision, if someone knows, hey, I'm not coming either way, they can have the same spot in Chicago next year. They can just move, forward that to next year. I thought that was sort of a classy move and a good gesture of good faith on those folks' parts to do that.
Yeah, and let's face it, a lot of the dealers that we see at the national and at some of the big shows are older folks, older even than you and I. But it's and you want to make sure that those guys, if they want to participate in the hobby as a dealer, that they're safe. And if they don't feel safe, then they shouldn't be penalized for that. If they're wanting to wait until we have a change in how this is affecting us, I think that's a good thing that everybody needs to keep in mind, that it's not just about you, it's not just about me and those of us who are still in our working years. It's about making sure that the people who are older than us and maybe a little bit more vulnerable, even if they're younger, those are the people you have to think about and be smart about this. And I know the economy and everybody wants to get back to work and do the things that can keep them make sure that they can make a living, but at the same time you can't be careless and put people at risk, because that's not fair. Great point. And again, it's like you said, the selfish person, wants, hey, let's go, but it's bigger than any one individual person. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break, but we'll be back with more from Rich Miller. One of One Card Shop offers a tremendous breaking experience, great customer service, and they're constantly pulling fire. Steve and his family take care of you like one of their own and treat you right. Anyone can break, but no one treats you like One of One. Come check them out on Instagram at one_of_one_card_shop. For all the hot breaks, get a gold mailer headed your way. And we are back with Rich Miller. This is uncharted territory. This is really, there is no template for this. There's no textbook. When this happens, this is what we do. We've been through this, but this is kind of precedent setting. So, I know people like to criticize how somebody's handling something or a decision, but this is really not something that we always deal with, not to this level anyway. And so, and then when hobby wise, for sure, we've never seen this. And if you had global pandemic as your reason for the national convention and sports being canceled in 2020, 10 years ago, you're a rich man. You put money on that in Vegas.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, there's no, I think everyone's trying to do due process, look at everything with the ultimate goal of public safety and people's safety and health and well-being, obviously at the forefront. And so you mentioned mentioned sports, and you have obviously a huge sports background. I'm a guy that likes to go to a game and be there live, and I hope, like you touched on, Rich, I hope we don't lose that, you know. And I think the athletes would tell you, you know, like you mentioned, and I think even when they get back on the field, on the ice, on the court, they're probably going to be playing to empty arenas, empty stadiums. And even for the athletes, that's going to be weird. You know, you're not getting that interaction with the crowd and the stuff they can feed off. And it's going to be different all around, including for them. And I hope we don't, you know, we get that back. I hope that isn't a permanent effect or a long-term effect. You know, even if I have to wear a mask and pair of medical gloves to go to the game with a Mets logo on my face mask, then, you know, I guess I'm willing to do it. Now, I'm sure there's other people that might say, nope, I'll be in front of my TV with a cold beverage, enjoying it in my living room. And everyone's got a different perspective. I just hope there's more people that still want to go and attend and see that, just from a fan support and you know, just for the athletes themselves. You know, that's, you know, I know they're not necessarily playing for the fans, they're playing for their team and their teammates, but that fan, you're a sports guy, you know that's a huge element to what they do, and I hope we don't lose that long term.
Yeah, it will be, you know, it will be a challenge in a lot of different ways. Fan interaction with players. You talk about, you know, in-person autograph seekers. You know, they're obviously not going to have many opportunities to get autographs, I think, in the near future, just from a collecting standpoint. But you know, I look at what's to come here, and we just had the NFL draft, and everybody excited about the potential rookie cards for next year.
Yep.
But you know, look at the nature of football, and they're hoping to resume the season not resume the season, but pick up the season at some point, whether it's, you know, in September like normal or a little bit later. But so much has to happen, and you wonder about all the hurdles that they're going to have to go through, because it's a little different than baseball in that you have some distancing in baseball just by nature of the game. Football, it is a contact sport.
Oh yeah.
How do they get past the contact of players? You know, we obviously have not had enough testing. Do they test players every day? Will we have enough tests by that time? You know, how are they going to monitor the players that are potentially at risk for one reason or another? I'm sure they're thinking about all that stuff, but it's, you know, you look at that and you say, man, we got a long way to go before we kind of get to that point where we can, you know, think about that. You just, it boggles my mind to see that, you know, they're planning on going ahead full speed with this. And I understand it's 4 months off, but a lot has to change before we can get back and those guys would feel safe, I would think, about doing this. And, you know, I understand younger people maybe aren't quite as vulnerable and they get sick and you bring them off out of the mix and go forward. But boy, lots and lots of questions ahead. And, you know, it impacts the card market a little bit too, because you wonder, you know, how are they going to get pictures of these guys, you know, in their uniforms and get autographs from. I guess, you know, some of that can be done through the mail, but it's going to be potentially going to be some changes that lie ahead. Even if we get baseball back, I think football will be the real interesting case because of all the just the nature of the sport. Yeah,
a great point by you with the football. I mean, I'm a former high school football coach. That stuff in the trenches, there's no way around. There's no way around that. That's every play, and for seconds at a time. It's not even a quick thing. You're engaged with your man. There's no. It ain't much more closer contact than that. And it'd be, you know, the other thing, Rich, are you gonna have a situation where a player says, "Yeah, I know we're playing, but I'm not playing. I'm not going to risk my well-being or my family go home." You know, it's going to be interesting. I mean, there's so many dynamics at work here, and is a player going to say, you know what, I know we're taking the field again, but I'm not ready or I'm not comfortable at this point with where we are, and you know, and then how is that going to be perceived? You know, And, as a teammate, is the rest of the team going to say, hey, are you with us or you're not, So there's so many storylines and things we haven't even got to yet. And, you just, as a human being, you hope the best. You hope this thing subsides as quick. You mentioned vaccines. I think, especially in the football case, I hate to say it, they may not hear it, but you almost wonder, like, how can they play until maybe there is a vaccine? And just so many question marks across the sports world. And then, like you said, it affects the hobby secondary, with images and releases and autograph inserts. I mean, it trickles down to even the smallest levels, and it just each day you don't know what's gonna happen next. Right now we're dealing with in Topps and Panini's case, they use the same. For the most part, the same printing facility, so some of their releases are going to be on delay. Upper Deck doesn't, so they're apparently their stuff's going to come out as scheduled. But there's just so many things up in the air. It's again, uncharted territory. We've never seen to this level like this.
Well, they're having to get creative, and Topps has done a lot of things with baseball here just in the last several weeks with online releases that they're apparently able to to get printed, and that. I give them credit for being creative and doing some of these things that are a little bit unusual in terms of, that you look at the Topps Now program that they started with, a few years ago. Of course, it was built on the greatest moments that happen from day to day or milestones and things like that. Yeah. Obviously, with no games, they can't do that, but they're going back and commemorating some of the things from history on that day, which I thought was a really interesting, smart move to try and keep that franchise moving. And now with their deal with Derek Jeter, that's kind of a nostalgic thing a little bit, recent nostalgia, but and I'm sure Panini and Upper Deck are thinking of ways to try and utilize their licenses in a time when they can't do things as traditionally as they'd like. No matter how much they're working behind the scenes, there's things you just can't get past. So, but the card industry and then just the memorabilia in general, the licensing and products that are collector or fan oriented could become more and more important as we go on, and we see that they're not able to have the gate receipts that they're used to getting and the concession sales and that sort of thing. So maybe the hobby angle will become even more important where the leagues are concerned, because you still have a pretty large audience of engaged fans and collectors who are looking for tangible things and willing to spend money if they have it to put into the coffers, and help the leagues and the players move forward. And I think that very well could be more and more important as we get into the next year or two, because there's going to be a lot of lost revenue. When there's no fans coming to games, and maybe some people aren't going to be as engaged with the sports as they used to be if the season gets shortened and it's not like it used to be. Some people are going to maybe not be as interested as they were.
And you mentioned Topps. I mean, it's just probably more coincidence or luck, but I mean the 2020 art project, that stuff is just doing super well. And I mean, you couldn't have timed that any better with what's going on, because that's a set and a release that's unique, number one, and isn't really contingent on them actually playing on the field. And it's I've had Blake Jameson, one of the artists, on. He kind of led us behind the scenes with how that whole process came about. But I mean, as far as timing, that was just, I mean, I guess you could say it. They lucked out with that. Obviously, they didn't plan that, but it just serendipity, just perfect timing with that. And that stuff's doing very well on the secondary market. That project, that whole release thing, that's going to go right into December. So the last two cards will be released in December of 2020. So that's going to get them through the whole year.
And then on the basketball side, you've seen the Last Dance and the national craze that's kind of come out of that has really impacted the market for Michael Jordan, especially, and basketball in general. Not that basketball was already hot before all this happened, but I think this has even put another rocket behind that end of the hobby, and the prices that we've seen for that stuff. I don't know if it's sustainable or not, but it's been a pretty amazing thing to see. I know a lot of people that are pretty happy that they had Michael Jordan stuff stashed away and didn't sell it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and even his teammates, Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen have seen an increase with that show, and and that's what a lot of the even like ESPN and Fox Sports with no real sports to broadcast, that they're going back and replaying games. I mean, what do you expect them to do? I mean, that's all they can really do. It's just I can imagine being like a Sports Center anchor, and that's got to be a tough gig right now to get through that hour without showing highlights of current games, and kudos to them. I think they've done a great job with what they have to work with. You mentioned the NFL draft. It basically Roger Goodell was a virtual draft. Everyone in their living room, Roger Goodell in his basement. And it's funny. I watch the draft every year anyway. I'm a huge football guy. But it was interesting. I was interested to see how they're going to do this. Are they going to be able to pull this off? And I got to give them, hats off to them. I thought it played out real well, considering the circumstances and seeing the families in the living rooms and the reactions. There were some great moments, and again, to just adapt to what we're dealing with. All these organizations, sporting leagues. Broadcast companies, for what they have to deal with, they're doing a pretty good job adapting to the circumstance, and the hobby too.
Advances in visual technology have really paid dividends for a lot of the sports-oriented things that we're seeing now. Weren't possible 6 or 7 years ago. You wouldn't be able to pull something like that off. Without the advances that we've had in the high-speed downloading and all different kinds of things that play into that. The NFL draft was amazing what they did. People don't realize it, how much went into getting that on the air and having it look even reasonably good. It was way more than I expected.
Yeah.
In terms of the quality of it. Yeah. And then you're seeing a lot of things pop up around the hobby too. You're seeing a lot of different podcasts and
explosion
Zoom meetings and Zoom interviews and that sort of thing. So we're making use of all that technology.
Yeah, we just kind of as humans, we just adapt and survive and do the best we can with what we got to work with. I think everyone's doing that, whether it be an industry, a sports league, a hobby company. We just, we do the best we can and hopefully get through it. And, interesting times to say the least. That's for sure.
Definitely has been. And, it's, I think, as long as people try to be patient and be a little bit creative from time to time, and thank goodness we've all got high-speed internet, or most of us anyway at this point, and we can get online and go on eBay or our favorite sites that we use to buy and sell cards, and thankfully for us, they're still reading our stories, and so it's using our tools. We have some tools on our site that are kind of interesting. Even if you're not ready to buy anything, you can keep track of all the different hot cards on eBay and that sort of thing. People have time to do it now, and so they're kind of experiencing a lot of things that they can digest and use as they try to move their collections forward as best they can. And I'm seeing a lot of engagement just from new collectors that or re-engaged collectors, guys in the Jordan the Last Dance show that has really brought a lot of those people back. They were active in the 80s and 90s and collected at that time, and now they're reading some of the stories about the increase in Jordan cards and whatever, and just kind of looking to to kind of connect with sports in some way. And if cards are the way to do that, or autographs or memorabilia or whatever, then that's an interesting scenario that's played out. That we've always thought that the collectors at that time, which was really the modern golden era of the hobby, when there were card shops in every corner, and we've seen some of those people come back over the last 5, 7, 8 years. But now this has really brought it forward with people having extra time and looking to fill out those sets that they put together back in the 80s, when the Griffey Jr. card was just out of reach of that weekly allowance, now they can go online and buy one.
Yeah, it's just amazing. We're going to get through it. Again, Rich, I want to, I'm glad you came on because your insight being in the hobby and also having a sports background, I think, in current events, even though, like I said, it's uncharted territory, the insight you can bring to both of those worlds was important. I'm glad you shared some of that with us and the listeners today. So, as I always do with the guests, I give you the final word, give out the website where people can find Sports Collectors Daily, especially nowadays. Not that you needed this to do well. You were doing well before, but all the more so. Anything you want to, give out, URLs, websites, the floor is yours.
I always take advantage anytime anybody offers a free plug.
Yeah.
So happy to do it, and happy that to connect with anybody. The best way to do it, obviously, is through the website, sportscollectorsdaily.com. As I mentioned, we update every day with 4 fresh stories, and if you miss a day or two, that's fine. You can come back and search the archives or look under the various categories that we have. If you're a modern card collector, you can stick in that category, or if you're interested in vintage cards, we've got a category for that. If you don't want to go to the website every day, you can sign up to get the headlines in your email every day. There's no charge for it. There's just a box on the website, and you can sign up there, put your email in, and you'll get that daily email every day about 11 o'clock Eastern time is when it gets sent out, and you can connect that way. We're on Facebook, Sports Collectors Daily Facebook page. We've got over 90,000 fans on there that and to enjoy what we post there, and they are happy to add their 2 cents in, and we invite everybody to join the conversation there. I'm on Twitter, @SportsCollector is my handle. That's where the business is, and I'm on Instagram, but don't really do a whole lot of things there just because of lack of time. So, but any of those places, happy to have anybody that wants to engage with us, and you can always connect with me via email on the website as well. There's a contact form on the page, and happy to help anybody that needs help.
Yeah, awesome stuff, Rich. I appreciate it. Thanks again. Be safe, be well to you and family during what's going on.
You too, John. Thanks again for having me on. Enjoyed the chat.
We love our listeners. Without you, there is no us. We care about your opinions and feedback and invite you to reach out to us on any of our social media accounts. On Instagram @SportsCardNation Podcast, Twitter @SportsCardNati1, or email the show at sportscardnationpc@gmail.com. We don't ask for much, but if you really like the show, give us a shout out. Tell your friends or give us a follow on our social medias. If you enjoy the show, please give us a positive review on iTunes or any of the platforms you are listening on. Thank you.
Let me tell you about Iron Sports Cards and Collectibles. They are your number one source for all your PSA grading submission needs. They are constantly submitting, so they are always at the ready when you're ready. They offer various turnaround levels at the lowest prices around. Cards are insured to and from PSA at no additional cost to you. And they even provide the card savers your precious cards need to be put in before being sent to PSA. They take care of that for you. And because of their elite status at PSA, they have some of the best turnaround times around. They even have group chats for each submission, so you know exactly where your status is on your cards. They have open dialogue and open communication. What are you waiting for? Contact Rob on Facebook on Iron Sports Card Group. That's Iron Sports Card Group on Facebook. Or get a hold of Rob on Twitter at Iron Sports Cards. All one word, at Iron Sports Cards. They'll take care of you. Well, folks, that does it for this week's show. We hope you enjoyed it. First off, I want to thank our distinguished guest this week, Rich Mueller from Sports Collectors Daily. Check that site out. Rich does a great job with it, and I'm on it every day. And much of the news you hear on this show, we source from there. Credit where credit's due. So props to them for being right on any kind of breaking hobby news, and cut out the middleman and check their site out. Again, I want to come down to closing here. I want to wish everybody well. I hope everyone's doing well, hanging in there. There's been some good news on the COVID-19 front, but we're not obviously where we'd like to be or where we really need to be yet. So continue to do what you need to do to keep going. A few programming notes. Next week's guest is Jeff Dinson. You may not know him by that name. You may know him more by his tag name, if you will, which is Ep.75. Jeff's going to tell some personal stuff, and Jeff's one of those guys in the community doing great things. He creates content himself, including a 24-hour stream on YouTube. He does a lot on his YouTube stream, but does a lot of giveaways, very giving, helpful, and that's how I noticed him. And I said, man, I got to get, I call him young man. He's a little bit, anyone a little younger than me, he's always going to be young man. But get him on the show to talk about kind of where he came from, some of his demons he's overcome, and how he's kind of given back to the community. So redemption story. I love redemption stories, if you couldn't tell by some of the guests we do have on here. So Jeff's going to be on next week, tell you a little bit about what he does. Many of you may know him, and he's going to bring some of his personal stuff to the table, and we're going to talk a lot of hobby stuff too. Just make that known as well. So we'll Deafness 45 next week. We hope you join us for that show, episode 76. We got some great guests, guys, upcoming. I got almost for the next month and a half, kind of booked out. I don't want to mention any names, just because you never know, scheduling conflicts and the like. But we got some really great guests, and that's what this show is about. Is the guests, more of them, less of me. That's the recipe for success, if you ask me. So also don't forget Saturday mornings, Hobby Hotline, the web's only live call-in hobby podcast, featuring myself and the other podcast hosts from many of your favorite podcasts. That's 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, every Saturday morning. Rotating guests, so you never know who you might see on the show, including yours truly. I won't be on the coming week, but coming up here in a couple weeks, I'll be back on. But regardless, check it out. It's really gaining a lot of traction. We enjoy doing it for you, and it's your show. You're the director. You call in, you set the tone, you set the topics, and we go from there. So can't beat that. So again, in closing, everybody stay safe, stay well. We'll see you in 7 days.
Don't take any shit from anybody, and I mean it.
That's it, that's all there is. Come on.